Ben?
I did. I took that. I had a couple of little things in that game, but
You got some sick line value.
I like that. That's great. It's
I know why that's every time that happens, it's the
kiss of
kiss
death,
of
right?
death.
Yeah. All right, friends, we're back in action here at Stokastic. College football, live before lock, week 9, all sorts of stuff to get to. We're going to talk about the games. We're going to talk about the players. We're going to answer your questions. Hopefully, set the tone for a good day in your lives. I'm Ben Rasa. Matt Gajewski joins me. We're ready to rock. We were just talking about Navy and Notre Dame and all sorts of stuff on the slate today. We have some really fun games to break down. How are you feeling as we are about an hour from kickoff?
Always excited for kickoff. It's nice we had a little change in some of the slate dynamics, and I think that's just because some of the better games at the beginning of the year, you wouldn't necessarily have circled them on the calendar. So Navy's on the slate. Tulane in North Texas is on the slate, which has a monstrous 69 total. So it's just a little different for DFS than what we normally see. But I like when we change it up a little bit and, you shake up your rhythm.
What we're going to do. Totally agree that there's just some new wrinkles to this slate. There's some new teams and obviously some storylines, national championship implications, which is what you want at this time of the year. We'll see.
Are you talking about the SEC game or are you talking about Navy?
I'm talking about Navy. I'm talking about BYU. I'm talking about these random undefeated teams that are just not that good. And we're going to find that out today, but that's neither here nor there, friends. I see you guys rolling in. You hit the like button right off the bat. It helps the show out, helps us in the algorithms. You know how it is in this world of algorithms. We gotta beat them. I don't even know what goes on. But just hit the like button. Subscribe to this very channel and be part of the 100,000 of your friends. Same questions I always like to ask. Let's start with injuries. It looks pretty clean. Trey Harris, is he a true game time decision? I just saw that news come across my Twitter no more than a half hour ago. What is the injury shaping up to be?
Clean right now, and you know how that goes. It's only clean until it's not.
Yep.
Trey Harris, he's been a game time decision for the last 2 or 3 weeks. I'm guessing he plays, but you never know. You need to monitor that. Otherwise, I think it's pretty clean. I don't think Brady Cook gives it a go. Apparently, he's trying his hardest out there, but he's dealing with a high ankle sprain. So it doesn't seem positive. You never know, though. That's about it. I don't think there's much we're waiting on. Big Ten releases their injury report, right about now. So we'll see if something pops up.
In terms of pricing, we look, we've got we're going to dive into everything, but just taking a glance, Milrose north of 10. You've obviously got a bunch of guys in the 9s. Soft, normal. What does it look like for value? How does the slate unfold just on a very macro level?
It's pretty tough for the QBs. I have more interest in non-QBs in Superflex than maybe any other main slate this year, but it's still pretty tepid interest. Only a small portion of my portfolio ended up shaking out like that. Pricing is semi-tight. The pockets where you can find value are those 4K receivers, upper 3K receivers, which allows you to jam in the studs, which again is why I don't necessarily prefer going all the way to like a punt Superflex or a quad RB build. But you could do it if you want. I think it's more viable than typically.
Let's get into it. We got Hal joining the team. Welcome to Team Stokastic. Tyler, following for 2 years, not 2 months. That's what we like to say. All right, let's go to quarterbacks. Let's get this started. Let's dive into everything that we've got. And I mentioned that Milroe leads us off, but certainly he doesn't lead us off in ownership. Ownership actually looks pretty condensed. We'll see how it goes, as we get closer and closer to lock. But it seems like you've got Riley Leonard, who's always on the slate, Josh Hoover in a matchup with that Texas Tech defense, and then Mr. Mendoza, a pay down option. Is that kind of what you're seeing? How do you look at the landscape of quarterback today?
I actually don't really like any of those options, and I'm trying to stay away from the chalk for the most part at this position, especially when you have guys like Riley Leonard, Mendoza. They just come with a definite risk. With Riley Leonard, it's everything passing wise. I mean, his passing props today are like 171.5. He's well under the league averages, 7.4 yards per attempt. It's just basically, does he break off a long run? And it's buried us a couple times in the past. It's literally the same analysis as like the last 4 weeks. But now he's very expensive, 8,800 for him. There is significant opportunity cost where even if he has that break, that huge run, it might not even matter. So I'm definitely not playing Riley Leonard, 2% of lineups. Mendoza, he's going to take sacks, and this is a very volatile game. A lot of that projection is just because they're favored by 10 points over Oregon State. They're getting back Jaden Ott today. I think there's a chance they increase the run rate. I'm just not sure he's a very good player. So I'm definitely coming in lower on Mendoza. I have him in 1% of lineups right now, just taking a really active stand against those two chalk pieces.
With that, it should open up some potential spots. So are you going to the other side of that game with McCoy? Are you looking for Tulane's quarterback? Like what are your ownership allocations? Or are you saying, you know what? Give me Gabriel, give me Jalen Milroe, guys like that. I'm actually going to go spend the money.
Yeah, I'll run you through my top ones. Josh Hoover is my most exposed quarterback. Part of that is he's extremely easy to stack on both platforms. Honestly, he might even be easier to stack on FanDuel because of the price of his receivers. So the price of the stack you play ends up being pretty cheap over there. But on DraftKings, it's not all that different. There's really 4 receiving options you could use with him, and he's averaging well over 300 passing yards per game. He's not mobile, so he kind of needs to do that. But you have just about the best matchup you could possibly draw up against Texas Tech. The total 67 points. TCU is favored by a touchdown. They have a 60% pass rate, one of the worst offensive lines in terms of run blocking in college football. So they can't even really run the ball in these advantageous matchups. Not to mention Texas Tech's injuries kind of favor the pass. So yeah, Hoover is a player that I will be heavily exposed to. Number 2, after you get behind Hoover, it's pretty even across the board. Will Howard and Chandler Morris are 2 other players. The Nebraska matchup scares me, but Will Howard keeps coming down in price. He's live to 300-yard bonus in any game like this. We just saw Nebraska give up 40+ to Indiana with their quarterback getting hurt right around halftime. And his receivers honestly aren't that expensive either. You have one at almost every single price point, even a punt if you want to play some Carnell Tate. Chandler Morris, I think, is kind of a no-brainer at 8,900. The TCU transfer, former 4-star. So this isn't the typical talent that North Texas has. It's actually much better. He has 140 yards in the ground this year. He's averaging 349 through the air. This is a full air raid offense, 59% pass rate, 5th in pace. Now Tulane's 128, so definitely slow it a little bit. But this guy's averaging 43 attempts per game. We've seen it multiple times, one against Texas Tech, where he doesn't even need to have an efficient game. If he throws a pick 6 or something like that, his just raw attempts are so good that he's likely to get there even at his price tag. Plus the mobility helps a ton. He's only taken 8 sacks this year, which is pretty wild. Tulane is a better defense. It's one of the best teams they faced this year, but North Texas didn't exactly have an easy non-con. He's been tested a little more than most AAC QBs.
What about guys that are kind of in this mid-range? You look at I'll give you some examples. What about someone like Retzloff? Someone like that. Jackson Dart's a little more expensive, but I don't think he's getting a ton of love out there. Are these just tournament plays or any of these type of guys factoring in?
I think they're mostly tournament plays. I just went through my top 3. Once you get beyond that, my second, or my, I guess, 4th and 5th most owned quarterback are way up in the expensive range with Jalen Milroe and Dylan Gabriel. I think the ceilings are pretty self-explanatory on them. They're just expensive. So it kind of depends. Do you want to sink a lot of your potential salary into these players and punt elsewhere? With Gabriel, you can make some really cheap stacks. Evan Stewart and Trayshawn Holden, who should be back from suspension, are very cheap. Milroe, I don't know why they can't price Jeremy Bernard above 5K. He's at 4.2 again. So it's pretty easy to stack Milroe if you want to do that. After him, you get to Darian Mensah, just the other side of that North Texas game. He's tricky because they use a backup as sort of like a Taysom Hill for packages, which I don't love. So I think you can get down. He's my favorite, just pure punt play. It's between him and McCoy, but I would slightly prefer Mensah. Save you on some ownership. And I guess the last one to really mention that's outside of pure dart throw range is Baron Morton on the other side of that TCU game. TCU's defense shouldn't scare you either. And this Texas Tech team is another pseudo air raid. There's plenty of stacking options with him. So those are my favorites. Everyone else that you mentioned, Dart, Ja'Cory Brown, Retzlaff, even Ewers, I have a little bit of them, but it's under 5%.
Pavia?
Pavia is in that range. Pavia is better. Pavia has a great price tag on FanDuel.
We'll get there in a second. Absolutely. I want to ask you specifically about one more guy, and then we can turn it over to FanDuel and we'll keep it moving. The situation with Indiana. You mentioned the quarterback goes down. The guy behind him, certainly, we talked about this on Betting You over at Odd Shopper. This is not a nobody. We've seen this guy a little bit. Jackson in the pool for you.
I didn't X him out. I'm pretty sure I have 0 of him. Depending on what I was doing, I either got like 1 or 2% or nothing. He's a risk. I mean, you're definitely right now I have 0. I don't know that I will change that. I didn't plan to change my CSV, but I kind of want to increase my exposure to Morris, so maybe I will.
No Horvath love. Sorry. I think I'm rooting for Navy, but I really don't see it today.
The problem is he's expensive. You're paying, like, you have to think of him like a running back. And would you rather, what is he, 8'6"? Would you rather play him or RJ Harvey?
I really worry about Navy today. I hope they move the ball, but
You and me both, my man. You and me both.
Very, very, very concerned. All right, let's go to FanDuel because there's some quarterbacks over there that definitely need to get discussed, and Cam Ward would be one of them. Now he's $12,800. They're a big favorite over Florida State, and why wouldn't they be? Where is he in the player pool?
He's one of the top quarterbacks on FanDuel, even at price. There's so many value pieces on FanDuel week in and week out. It's just super easy to get up to the expensive guys. No problem playing Cam Ward. Let's see here. He's my second most owned quarterback behind Hoover. Pavia's third, though.
Okay, and that's a price point thing, obviously.
Yeah, I will say there is a drop when, Hoover, Ward, the top 2 most owned in the portfolio. Then I get to 3 guys in that 8K range. Far lower. There's a gap between like Ward and Pavia, but it's Pavia, Wegman, and Ja'Cory Brown all in that 8K range. And they just free up salary.
Any Avery Johnson love? They take on a Kansas defense, just a Kansas team at times that has been really disappointing this year.
Yeah, 10% of him, 9% of Daniels on the other side. A weird game, and I'm pretty happy with these exposures. The pace is extremely slow, but both offenses are explosive and both defenses are questionable. So I could kind of see it going either way, playing below the total or way above if things shake out the right way. Just super concerning stuff from both teams at times this season. So definitely I want pieces of. Don't want to be overexposed, which kind of leads me to this 10-ish% of both.
Anything else over on FanDuel? I mean, we've got games like LSU and Texas A&M. I think that's going to be a fantastic game. I'm not sure it's the best DFS spot, but maybe you want to argue that Wegman can torch what I do think, even though they've made strides, is a gettable LSU defense.
I like the under in the game for a lot of reasons. Pace, both defenses have played a little better. Wegman definitely shaky at times. Nussmeier's had a great year. I think some of it is pretty fortunate, but I think this comes in under the total. Wegman, he ends up being my 4th most owned QB because he's so cheap. Like, they just did nothing to price him near efficiency. Nussmeier is closer to efficient pricing, so I have less of him. He's in the 10% range. I mean, it's 2 explosive offenses against 2, I guess, improved defenses, playing with a slow pace. With the 55 total, I don't think you should be overexposed to this by any means. The projections definitely don't suggest that either.
Do you have any non-dual QB lineups today?
On DraftKings, I have a few. FanDuel, I have 0.
Okay. So it still looks like all in all, you're probably going to want that. Last question. Any yours on FanDuel?
A sprinkling.
Sprinkling.
He's just so bad, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of him. I actually wanted to ask you about that because his prop for passing yards was really low, but I didn't know if that baked in like maybe because of like this Arch C time or what the hell is going on there?
Yeah, it's low.
It is low, right?
If I didn't think he was such a big underachiever, I would take that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I cannot.
I don't think he is a long leash, man.
I don't either. I don't either, but I don't know if Vanderbilt is the team to really push that more towards a true controversy. Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
I agree with that 100%.
All right. We'll have plenty of time. Like I said, if you have questions and everything, but let's get to some stuff. We're going to get to running back in a second, but But you heard this last week. Many of you have taken advantage of it, but I'm sure some of you watching have not. It already is on the screen. It says, try our DFS sim tools for free. And what it is, it's extremely simple. There's a link in the description of this video. It's also that link on the screen. You have to go to it. That's step one. And when you get there, you are going to be granted, you'll see all these different offers from all these different sports books. Maybe you're on some of them, but I doubt you're on all of them. Find one that you've been interested in. Find one that has a really good bonus, and you press that claim offer. You follow those instructions. Not only are you going to get all the bonus stuff from the book, which is awesome, you take that, you see the instructions to email our support. We'll give you a month of any DFS core package for any sport. So if you say, I want to play college football for the next month for free, boom, do this and you're in. You say, I'm going to do 2 of them. Give me 1 NBA, give me 1 college football. You can do that as well. You can do 2 months of something. It is that simple. A great opportunity to take advantage. Super simple. Follow the instructions. Let us know if you have any questions. But I wanted to get that front and center in front of all of you, because if you're going to use these tools, why not get them for free for a month? Let's move to running back. Talk to me. There is some guys that are grading out at crazy ownership. Do you think that's warranted?
I understand why. We're talking mainly Mekhi Hughes. First off on him, their team totals 38 points. Tulane favored by a touchdown. Game total of 69 points. Unbelievable game environment for him. Second, his role is bananas. He's coming off a 29 touch game where he had over a 50% route rate. In general, teams allocate about 80-ish% route shares to running backs because they pass block at times. So when you see someone even crest 40%, it's pretty nuts. This guy's on the field almost every single snap, and he's the focal point of their offense. Their pass rate is 37.5%. The only real risk is blowout, and that's not even a significant risk because this is a touchdown spread. Everything lines up for him in this spot. I don't think the matchup is challenging. Yes, if you were to pick one way to attack this North Texas team, it would be through the air, but that's not how Tulane's playing right now, and they are vulnerable on the ground. So he's the first piece of chalk that is really hard to get away from. I think you absolutely can because there's plenty of players with the ceiling. I just want to say, first and foremost, he's a good play if you play him. Just make sure you're not eating the chalk everywhere else. The second guy to mention is Wisner for Texas. Jaden Blue has just been so atrocious this year, and it's not really an efficiency thing. It's fumbling, which, for DFS, we don't care that much about. Take away 2 points. As long as you touch the ball out, it doesn't matter. But it matters for coaches, and they're taking him off the field. He didn't have a single carry in the last game. He did have 9 targets, but you look at the routes, Wisner was in the field for more of them. Wisner also had 9 targets. That role's not clearly Jaden Blue's either. And I think it's very clear they're not really trusting him on early downs at this point. His carry count, since he had the 25 carry eruption spot, 6 carries he fumbled in the game, was benched. Then 11, Wisner carried him by 13 to 11 in that game. And then, he's just not seeing carries at all in the run game. Even if you think this is dead even 50-50, Wisner is an elite play at this price as an 18.5-point favorite against Vandy in a game with a 51 total. And Vandy's defense is non-existent. So those are the 2 chalk pieces. Maybe don't play them together if you're playing tournaments. Maybe if you do, navigate the rest of your lineups carefully. Hard to get away from them. They're amazing plays. It's just a matter of where do you take your leverage.
First 2 clicks in cash?
Yes.
What does that do to Darius Taylor? It's a Minnesota back that obviously should be busy, slight favorites at home. We've seen at times healthy carries, and we've seen some, he was really stifled against UCLA. Just shouldn't be talked about. They already frustrate, man. I'm already frustrated to begin with. What do you do here with Darius Taylor?
I love Darius Taylor. He's going to be my 3rd most owned back today.
Okay.
This is a range I love pivoting in. It's the same range as Mekhi Hughes. He basically has the same workload as Mekhi Hughes, just a significantly worse game environment. And Minnesota uncharacteristically is passing over 50% of the time this year. I don't understand. I honestly think they took a downgrade at quarterback and then they increased their pass rate from like 30% to 50%. Explain this to me like I'm 5. What in the world are they doing? But
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I don't have an answer. It's funny you say that though, because I was going to ask you not to go backwards. Minnesota's quarterback is also flat 5. He's in that same range. I
I
assume you're
X'd
not
him
getting.
out.
Yeah, okay. That's what I figured.
I was getting some, I X'd him out.
Yeah, okay. I get it.
He stinks. Not
Yeah,
telling
I
you anything
mean,
you don't know.
it's just I don't really understand Minnesota. I'm with you. It's not as run focused, but let's start getting to these other backs. And we'll start at the top with RJ Harvey. UCF back. I mean, he exploded against Iowa State in a tough loss, but this guy's got home run upside. When you break off 80-yard runs, that helps. Are you looking to pay 9,200 for him?
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing. We'll be playing most of the my lineups are going to not most of my lineups, but most of my highest leverage guys, in my portfolio that I'm trying to be overweight on are these expensive backs at the expense of Hughes. I have a pretty significant negative stand against Hughes, which is wild because I'm still playing like 60%. But he's going to be mega owned today. But you can't really look at RJ Harvey, Jordan James, Darius Taylor, and tell me they don't have the same ceiling or a similar ceiling. With Harvey in particular, this team has an immense run rate. It's like 70% now that they've turned to their backup QB, and they've trimmed the fat. I don't know what they were doing early in the season, but they're no longer playing Penny Boone, no longer playing Richardson. It's basically RJ Harvey's backfield. He's handling everything, and this, even when they're losing, is like a 25 touch minimum workload for him. So I think he's an awesome play. No issues getting to him. And I think you could make the same argument for players like Jordan James. His rushing prop is like 100 yards. They're 3 touchdown favorites at home. He'll split a little more work than RJ Harvey. I don't think it matters. Illinois has been absolutely gashed on the ground this year. It's a miracle they've won as many games as they have. He's in this range. Taj Brooks has an amazing workload. You're looking at like a 25 touch floor for him. They play super fast. Just love all these expensive backs at the expense of Hughes. Most of them you have to pay a little bit. It changes your construction, but it's not enough where I'm going to be shying away.
Yeah, you mentioned Taj Brooks. That workload is crazy secure. It's really hard to argue with that. There are a couple guys that are going to be lost in that range. Hankerson is probably going to be a casualty of the slate. Do you think that's fair to say? And do you think that's warranted?
I forgot about him in this discussion. He's a good play. I have a little less interest. They're 10-point underdogs. But man, with Miller out, his touches are absolutely crazy too. If you wanted to get to him, I don't think it's the craziest idea, but I would rather get to most of the players we talked about. Or excuse me, no, Jam Miller. I'm talking about Jam Griffin. Two guys named Jam on this slate. Pretty wild. But since Jam Griffin went out, he's touched the ball, or at least just raw carries, 26, 28, and 17 times. And in the 17 carry game, he was the only running back that had a touch. That was a game script thing. I mean, you could play him if you wanted to. I'm no fan of Cal. That game is just a little greasier than the ones we talked about. The total's 49 points.
Definitely greasier, but he also ownership wise is going to be, I'd say, pretty significantly lower owned than some of those dudes.
Yeah, I'm
I
going to
want
make
to
a
go.
boost to him right now.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ben.
I got you. I assume just to get him out of the way that you're not going to go double mega mind and try to target Ott, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Ott needs to prove it to me.
I mean, I don't know what the hell's, obviously he's also been banged up, but yeah, it's not going great.
Yeah, I think that's
Uh,
just it. Feel bad, but just rest, dude. Quick aggravating the injury in game. Just take a week off, which he finally has. Hopefully it helps him.
on the complete other side of this in terms of salary, I want to bring you to the Ole Miss game. They're big favorites against Oklahoma. Uh, we know about certainly they've when they were beating teams by like 90, they had a multitude of backs. Parrish, probably the one that comes to mind the most. But I want to ask you about him, and then I want to ask you about the cheapies, particularly Ulysses Bentley. Are these guys in play today?
Parrish and Bentley, I think, are in play. The biggest hole you can poke in them, they use JJ Big East, their enormous defensive tackle at the goal line. It's like what the Eagles do with Hurts, but instead of it being a tush push, they just run this heavy package with, a big 300-pounder who slams into the line and scores a lot. So it's been working. Red zone stuff is a bit of a concern for them. With Bentley, Matt Jones got hurt, and they just 1-for-1 took whatever Matt Jones was getting, which was pretty considerable. It's like 10 carries a game, 12 touches or so. They just gave that all to Bentley. He's really cheap. If you wanted to use him as a salary saver, you certainly could. And then I think you have a pretty efficient price tag on Parrish. I don't have strong feelings one way or the other about him being over or underpriced. It's an explosive offense, efficient price tag for a guy who has a great workload, but will cede red zone work to a defensive tackle.
Anyone else over on DraftKings before we make the switch? Jeremiah Love, I don't know, LJ Martin. These guys seem pretty fringe at best.
Yeah, Love is always kind of your premier GPP play. Every time I run a study on these backs and efficiency stuff, what if I told you he was averaging a forced missed tackle more frequently than Ashton Genty?
Yeah, that would surprise me.
That's true. But Love carries the ball 12 times a game because Notre Dame's head coach, I don't know what he's doing. It's not like Price is bad as a change of pace, but 12 carries, like 14 carries, man, like you're losing games to Northern Illinois. You're playing games much closer than you should. Like maybe give your best player more carries anyway. Because of that, you have to live on efficiency. He is extremely efficient. So you get these games where he absolutely dominates a slate. Because of that, I think you want to have at least some exposure. He's never owned. And that makes sense. His workload is actually pretty bad, considering we have RJ Harvey and Hankerson and stuff on this slate. But yeah, I always play a little bit of Love because he's so talented and he can always bring big games into the fold with his explosiveness. I think you could say the same thing for like the Ohio State backs. They cannibalize each other, rightfully so, but there's a ceiling to both of them, especially as a team with a massive team total. I think the Alabama backs are interesting. Missouri is a big underdog in this game. We've kind of seen it both ways. If Cook plays, it's like 14 points. If he's out, it's like 17 points. Maybe we'll run into efficiency with them at some point. We haven't really seen it. The only other guy I think is somewhat interesting is Jonah Coleman. He's similar to Love. He has a little better workload. That's volatile because you have to deal with the Taven Jackson stuff. If he's actually much worse than Rourke, Washington could be a little underrated. But that's about it for running back. Those are the sprinkling guys I have at the end of, I guess, one last guy, McCray for Illinois. He comes up a decent amount at 4K. I think I would rather just focus my attention on Wisner and eat the chalk there.
On FanDuel, a lot of the same, but this has been a theme as this game is at night. Giddens is over there and he's just awesome. We're both big fans of him. He's 10,100 against the KU defense. How much, is he above the guys that we talked about? Where does he fit into because he's in the RJ Harvey, Taj Brooks, Jordan James price range.
Yeah, man, you can't say anything bad about him. Sometimes you want to poke a hole in the workload because they'll play Edwards a little bit, but man, he's so good. He's averaging over 100 yards per game. I don't think they priced him up enough at 10-1. And we talked about a number of QBs that are pretty easy to play so you can get to Giddens. The run game is the focal point of both offenses. He's an excellent play. The only real, I guess, Devin Neal on the other side, he's 8,900 and Highshaw is questionable for this game. We had a couple games where change of pace Highshaw missed earlier this year and Neal soared above 20 touches rather than allocate the Highshaw touches somewhere else, gave them all to Neal. So that's a little late news stuff to watch for the FanDuel slate specifically. If you're playing DraftKings at night, you'll have to do the same thing. Otherwise, it's mostly the same backs. Jonah Coleman is a significantly better play on FanDuel that's pricing related. Otherwise, the next player from FanDuel only is Mullings for me, and I have just 5% of him. So it's pretty similar. Giddens and Devin Neal are the big differences.
What about Le'Veon Moss? Do you think that Texas A&M can employ a ground-heavy attack?
I think they'll try, but Amari Daniels gets like 10 carries a game. It's similar to what Notre Dame does. I'm just not really sure why they're doing that. So I have 3%. I guess Caden Durham I should mention, 8,100 coming off.
Awesome.
He's been awesome. He's cheap, 20 plus touches. Brian Kelly just had some concerning things to say about him injury-wise. He basically straight up said he's not going to be 100%, so we'll see how much he can do.
I worry about them against that front, honestly.
I agree with that.
Good. Yeah, I get it. He's been awesome, but yeah, I saw those same quotes that said he's going to just be like operating at like 80% perpetually.
You're like, okay, great.
That could be a problem. Carroll or Battle on DraftKings?
Prefer Carroll. Battle, you just have to gamble that he gets the touches. We've had that a couple times with TCU. They're running hot hand. We don't know what they're going to do. I don't think they know what they're going to do. Their run game has been atrocious. They've benched Cam Cook and Payne already. So now they said they're going to give Battle a decent workload. Maybe 3 weeks ago, they did this with Payne. And then Cam Cook had like one long run. And then it was like, good night, Payne. Here's the Cam Cook show. You just have to contend with hot hand. With Missouri, I don't think Carroll's going to cede as much work, but he might cede some. In their last game, Jamal Roberts had 5 carries. Kewan Lacey had a carry. I mean, like maybe they even give Tavares Jones one. I don't see that happening, but I'm not sure the workload's there. I would guess it is. And then they have to contend with being a 17.5 point underdog or 14 if Cook plays, somewhere in that range. I don't love either. I'd rather just play Wisner.
Yeah, Wisner, and he fits certainly that 5,200 and under range. Pavia is in play. A terrible matchup, I agree, but he can do some things. One last guy I want to ask you about. We already talked about him. I just want to know if this changes anything for you. On FanDuel, Jaden Blue is cheaper than Wisner. Does that matter to you, or is he just unplayable?
Okay, let me switch back over to FanDuel. I'm over here trying to bump Hankerson after you reminded me about him.
I mean, I don't know if to me, I would say no, but I just wanted to mention that he is flat 7.
I think that would be something we would consider more if Wisner wasn't 77.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm overexposed to Wisner on FanDuel. He's my most owned running back. I feel pretty good about it, but not like set it, forget it. So I don't know.
The problem I have with it is not, I think both those things can be true. Like you could be overexposed to Wisner, but that doesn't mean you want to play Blue per se.
This is also a big spread. Last game, they only used these 2 backs. The only other guy that saw carries was Niblet, kind of like, I don't know. He was like a Roshan Johnson player for this team where he's actually a running back. He's playing out of position because of injuries. They didn't have Jarrett Gibson. Like Jarrett Gibson touched the ball 9, 4, and 2 times in the 3 games prior. Maybe that's just a performance thing, but that worries me a little bit. I don't think this is a lock and load play, but it's still really good. I mean, it's really hard to get it. Wisner has touched the ball at least 14 times in 3 straight games. So even if you put him at the floor 14, he's still a good play. And then if last week, I mean, this guy had 9 targets and 15 carries. If he sees that, you have to play him almost.
No, I hear you. Listen, I'm not going to push back on that. Will Griffey, appreciate that super chat. Thoughts on Giovanni McCoy on DK at 5,200?
He's a pretty good play. I think it's between, man, that range is just a little gross. I think he might be my favorite. It's between him and Mensa, in my opinion. McCoy gives you the best floor because he's pretty mobile. Mensa gives you none of that. But obviously, you're dealing with a game that has a 49 total versus the Tulane one, which has a 69 total. So there's like 30 points more or what is it, 20 points more expected to be scored in the latter game. I think you could do it. I don't hate it. I actually have a decent amount of him. He's in my top 4 most owned QBs right now with me messing around a little bit. So yeah, it's more of a floor than a ceiling play, I think, of 18%.
Your burners in chat. Someone explain to me why College Game Day is at Indiana. Well, I know you agree with those sentiments. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the Hoosiers can do. But all right, let's get
Don't
to
you
why.
agree? Where would you put it?
Probably at Amherst. Wagner comes to town. I think
Oh my gosh.
No. Where would I if UCF wasn't so bad, I would have said the Bounce House.
I think it should be the LSU Texas A&M game.
Yeah, that's a real good game.
2 unbeatens in the SEC. Really good chance one of them goes to the playoff now, as long as they don't mess up.
Yeah, it might
I mean,
be
they
that.
could very easily do that, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I think not in Oregon. That's too big. Yeah, College Station's probably the answer. Anyway, let's get to wide receiver. Before even that, though, if you have questions, we already dropped a lot of bets in Discord. you've been betting some football and you haven't gone over to Tails to check out what we got going on, you are missing out, in my opinion. It's a great community. You get access to early lines, particularly with Matt. He's dropping a ton with closing line value throughout the week. You get all sorts of different sports. It's worth checking out. Again, the links are there in the description of this video. If you just want to hang out, like I said, come in for a week, see what it's about, see if it helps your bankroll, see if you enjoy the process of hanging out, sweat bets, asking questions with the community. We'll see you in there. Make sure you, like I said, you stop in, you say hello. We'll introduce you because these are growing communities and it's super easy. Picks notified right to your phone. So if you're running around, but you still want action on these games, it's a great way to do it. Trey Harris officially out, it looks like.
Just saw that. Thank you for your ad read. It was extremely timely, so I could try to get this figured
Ooh,
out.
that's what I do.
I appreciate
Maybe I'll
you,
read
Ben.
it
That was
again.
great.
Well, as we kind of move to wide receiver, how big of news is that? It's not completely unexpected, but does that have a domino effect? I don't even want to go back to Parrish and Bentley, but like with Ole Miss in general, how big of a domino effect is this?
I think pretty big. It locks in the three receivers now because they've been rotating four. So Antwain Wells, Caden Lee, and Jordan Watkins should all pretty much be on the field. I think there's a chance they use more 12 personnel because Prescorn and Daquan Wright are both good receivers. I don't think we see a lot of like dusty receivers from the side just pop up. I think kind of they take the 6 or 7 guys they've been using and consolidate. Which right now for DK, I'm about to upload this to put, if any of you want it like ahead of time, put Antwain Wells at 13.2, Jordan Watkins at 11.5, Caden Lee at 14.9. He's coming off an 11 target game. Prescorn 6.5, Aiden Williams 2.9, and Daquan Wright 2.9.
Does it do anything to Dart? I mean, it makes his stack cheaper, but does it really affect him?
I don't think it affects Dart a ton.
Okay, fair enough. Let's get to wide receiver. On the whole, like all we talked about is how dusty Minnesota's passing attack is, and then Daniel Jackson just walking around at the top here. What do you make of it? There are some cheap wide receivers, including Daniel Jackson. How do you break down as we kick off wide receiver?
Yeah, I just say be careful with him. He has an awesome role. I think Minnesota's volatile. They've been much closer in games they shouldn't have been, elevating their pass rate north of 50%. They're favored here. If I was forced to bet the game, that's the side I would take. So anytime Minnesota guys pop, I think there's just inherent risk that they run the ball 70% of the time again. Like the only Minnesota player I'll ever feel good about is Darius Taylor. I limited Jackson. I have to rerun now with this Ole Miss news, so we'll see where I end up coming in, but I put a cap on him at 10% previously.
Would you rather have Trent Walker?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Because those two are going to be two of the most popular wide receivers. They're only $100 in difference. And so that's good context to know. And then you've got guys like Jeremy Bernard. He's a little cheaper. Savion Williams is a little more expensive. And you've got a string of, it looks like, of TCU players that are going to garner some ownership at wide receiver. Is wide receiver ripe for value, or is that just the way it's falling right now?
You're absolutely on it. It is very ripe for value. This like 4K range is loaded.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this is going to be an opportunity, to really pay down if you want to. The only guy, Tez Johnson for Oregon, who's just an awesome player. I'm a big fan of him. He's 7,200. Is that a guy that you're looking to get over on?
Yes. He was one of my most owned receivers when I first ran. I can't imagine this extra value we got is going to change that. If anything, I think he might go up.
Very good. Humboldt, look at that. Longtime member. Love the show. What do I adjust with the Sims? I mean, it's really like if you've used the Sims for any other sport, you obviously can boost some things and cap some guys, or you can do factory settings. But really, I don't really have a specific take on it, to be completely honest. I think as they roll in, you of course want to make sure, that the ROIs check out and that you're allocating properly in the portfolio. But what I do is just I consolidate, I get my favorite lineups, group them, maybe a couple tweaks here and there, but yeah, I'd say just keep rolling it, honestly, and
Yeah,
really just
honestly,
ahead.
I think some of the changes I make are just risk management.
Exactly. Allocation. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I'm over here doing stuff, not half listening. You already said what I was going to say. Like, if you don't want 80%, for example, if Mekhi Hughes gets hurt on the first play and you have like 80% of him, you're probably going to feel really bad. So, like, if you're like me and you would rather spread it out a little bit, we have uniques and stuff you can change to help you. And they're still good lineups. Like, the Sims are only giving you the best lineups from the play. Like, let's say you would even boosted a guy. Like, you're going to get the best lineups of that guy. You're not going to get the bad ones, the overowned ones, which helps a ton. Like, overall, even my cash rate has improved a lot since using them.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I want to ask you again, it's going to be the same theme about all this value. Texas, they're a big favorite, no doubt about it. They easily could keep it on the ground. You mentioned that both the running backs were peppered with targets, but with no bond here, who on the outside steps up, and are any of these guys in play? Because they're certainly cheap.
I think Matthew Golden is the best play, but it's close. He just has the most secure route rate. There are a couple of young guys that have begun to step up for this team that might be able to eclipse him on any given week. Ryan Wingo would be the guy I look to second, and third would be DeAndre Moore. I vastly prefer Golden and Wingo to Moore, though. It's going to be a situation I want to be kind of spread between them. I'm like you. I think there might be some hidden value in the Texas pass game.
Chris
Okay,
Albers.
so Caden Lee became my most owned receiver. I'm not super surprised. He had 11 targets last week.
Yeah, that's not.
It was at 35%. I didn't like do anything crazy either. Let's see where Watkins is. Watkins came in at. Why won't he show up? Oh, I got 0 Watkins, just mostly Lee. And then Wells. Okay, it mostly gave me a ton of Lee. I'm going to spread this out.
See, that's what we're talking about there. It's like you can work with that, but you might want to go wider exposure.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually the perfect example.
It's perfect example. It really is. Like, if you put all your eggs in that basket and Lee, something bizarre happens, he's on
the injury report too. So
yeah, it's college football. Evan Stewart, 4.2 on DK seems way too cheap for his talent. I tend to agree with that. I think that's a little light.
100%.
Chris Albers, appreciate the super chat. How are you stacking Hoover? Beck worth it, or a couple in the middle? And then as well as Battle. Just obviously TCU's got a lot of pieces. How do you see the Hoover stacks coming together?
A lot of Betch, JP Richardson, and Savion Williams. Savion is kind of in that mid-price range. He had 7 carries last week. That was another thing that was really weird. Apparently TCU hates their running back roster if they're going to give Savion Williams 7 carries. But then immediately the coaching staff came out and said, that's not sustainable. We shouldn't be doing that. I mean, kind of like what 49ers say about Debo. We'll use him in the run game if it's absolutely necessary. But JP Richardson is the second best route rate, and he's extremely cheap. I think you could tack him on. The only team I got quarterback +3s of was TCU.
Is Battle in there for you?
Battle wasn't in those particular ones. I didn't do anything for or against it, but I have some Battle. Again, I think he's risky because you don't even know that he's going to see the most of the work.
You play Hoover naked?
He doesn't run. With Richardson's price, I would find it hard to believe he's optimal without at least one guy, because the only one who's super price prohibitive is Betch.
That's the biggest problem. It's just like, it feels tough to think that none of those cheapies get there, considering the price points.
I actually got more Dart with this news. I think it's
I'm
just
not
the
surprised
stacks
at
are
that,
cheaper.
to be honest.
Yeah, me either. He was at like 2%. I'm up at 10 now.
Yeah. Bet your Tez Johnson.
Tez. In a vacuum.
Lee or Golden?
Lee. Close, though. Lee is my most owned receiver. I don't know if I should change this.
Decisions.
I kind of think I'm going to leave it.
There's so many cheap guys. I want to ask you about the other direction, though. Like, are you going to get like Ty Felton at all?
Yeah, and I have a little more of him now, it seems. You can basically punt twice and then play a stud if you want, or play 2 stud QBs, or play 3 stud running backs, whatever.
That's the thing. The allocation for the salary is really there. A couple other guys I just want to throw out, and then we'll get to FanDuel and we'll take some questions. And again, if there's anything that we miss, at JazzRazBets, at Matt_Gajewski, just follow us on Twitter. We're there. I'm walking around outside, all sorts of stuff. Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith, Ibuka, these type of guys are kind of in no man's land price-wise. They're not up all the way at the top. They're certainly not value. Is there a build where you go to those guys and maybe leverage a little differently? Are they popping up in any of your builds?
Yeah, particularly the stacks of those QBs.
Okay.
And it's those guys didn't really change much. Right now I have 14% Jeremiah Smith and a little bit less of Williams, but not significantly. Actually, he's at 14 too. I lied. 14 for him as well.
Do you have any Howard +2?
Let me go to Howard.
I'm just I mean, that's just a question for I'm genuinely wondering if you have like him, Ibuka, and Smith, or that's just too much salary.
I have a lot. So here's one with them both. Oh, this is a non-QB super flex. I have to look at this. Okay, here's my first one. It's Will Howard's. Never mind. I guess I don't.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Oh, here's one. Howard, Smith, Ibuka, Hoover, JP Richardson, Wisner, Mekhi Hughes, Ulysses Bentley. So it punted all the way at running back.
Yeah, the flat 3 Bentley does it. Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. All right, a couple more guys. What about like a Caleb Douglas on the other side of that TCU game?
You can play any Texas Tech starting 3 receiver.
It feels like there's a couple teams where that's just in play today. Texas Tech, TCU, even North Texas to a lesser extent.
Yeah, North Texas has some awesome receivers. Carnes is 3,100. What in the world is that?
Yeah,
I don't have the answer. I don't know what they were doing.
All right, let's get to the other side of it. Let's get to FanDuel, see what else pops up there. Savion Williams, certainly these TCU guys are still towards the top. Restrepo, that's a guy that's obviously not on the other slate. Miami's stud wide receiver. Do you worry about like game flow or anything like that, or is he just a guy that we want to get to?
Miami has beaten the snot out of a couple teams, and they haven't changed their pass rate. It's above 50%. It just seems like that's their offense, and they're going to do what they're going to do. So I think you could definitely play Restrepo. He's an awesome play over there. I have a lot of Cam Moore, so he's going to be in stacks. I don't have a lot of other Miami players. Horton is my second most on Miami guy over there.
One guy we didn't really talk about, and listen, they're 3 touchdown underdog on the road, and I'm not a huge fan of the team in general, would be the Illini, and specifically Zachary Franklin. He's $5,400 on FanDuel, though, in a game where they clearly should be trailing. You want to get to him at all?
Yeah, I have more of him over there. DK, he's a little, especially with the value that opened up on DK, he's down at 5%. But FanDuel, as we all know, they don't price things efficiently a lot of the time. He's completely fine over there.
Anything else like a Kyron Lacey, something like that? I mean, even a Noah Thomas, like, do you think, I mean, LSU has made some strides, but if you look at their passing, their secondary metrics overall, they haven't been good. Teams like South Alabama had some success. Anything from that game?
My highest owned FanDuel only guys was Restrepo. My second one is Noah Thomas. It's a price thing. He's 6,100, and you lock up the presumed wide receiver 1 for that team. The third is Jace Brown, and now we're getting into sub 10% guys. So it's mostly the same. It's a lot of TCU up at the top. Ryan Williams is in there, actually. Mm-hmm. Then it goes down to like Jace Brown, Sam Brown, Kobe Hudson pops up in there. Kyron Lacey's at 9.5% for me. Luke Grimm, he's at 8%. So they're mostly sprinkling guys. The highest exposed players on FanDuel are also mostly TCU guys.
What about Giles Jackson?
I have a little bit of him, just tough in this game environment. They're putting a lot of respect on Indiana's name, which I don't disagree with.
Restrepo or Jeremiah Smith?
Restrepo.
Yeah, I would agree. Any news on Damon Ward Jr.?
No news on him. North Texas is a great beat writer, but he usually does this like right before kick. I guess it's kind of in his wheelhouse. He was a game time decision last week, so I'm guessing he plays. And I'm guessing the lack of an update from him is that he's gonna play.
Does it matter for some of these other guys? Like, is Carnes dependent on that news?
Carnes is not. Okay, this guy wrote an article. Let me see here.
Yeah,
He's
Simplify. All those TCU guys are definitely playable.
we're not the only ones that have Ward on like a snap count. I just went and checked. So I just to see if something changed in like the last hour or something. We had him projected in on a snap count, which seems to be the consensus. And I haven't seen anything on Twitter that suggests otherwise. I mean, he could always play his normal role. You never know. He was projected to be their wide receiver one, but he's coming off like a month-long absence.
Let's see how those are all, I will say, all good running backs there. You've got Taj Brooks, Darius Taylor, Jordan James, or Hankerson. Gut feel, I would go Brooks, but you really, I don't think could go wrong with any of them.
Agreed.
Grimmer Pauling on FanDuel, your boy, Mr. Pauling.
Probably Grim.
That's pretty greasy.
It's a little greasy, a little bit.
Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free. We got a couple minutes left. And again, as I already mentioned, the real way to do this as news comes in is be informed. You get Discord, by the way, on the Stokastic side with any package. So if you take advantage of the deal, you're also going to hop in Discord. You get all those updates as they're coming because the news just keeps rolling. Karn's still good. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, Carnes isn't coming off the field. The only thing that changes, his target per route will probably drop, but he's playing 90% of the snaps at 3,100. What does he have to do?
Yeah, that's pretty well. Howard and Lee or Ja'Cory Brown and Trent Walker?
Give me the Howard side.
Yeah. I wonder what the split is in the Cal backfield. Yeah, you and me both, but I don't really care, to be honest.
Same.
It's tough. After the rerun, Dart or Hoover more of a priority for you?
Still Hoover.
Franklin or Lee? I assume it's Lee, right?
I think so, yeah. I think most questions are going to be Lee.
Yeah. Up top, Sheffield or Tez?
Tez.
Yeah. Tez is just the man.
Especially with Ward back on certain playing time. Ward is their wide receiver one. But he's on a snap count allegedly. So, I mean, it's like the Puka Nacua situation. What exactly do you do with that?
Yeah, well, I can tell you what I do with it. I lose money on Cooper Kupp exposure because that's just how things work out. This is a good question. And I think that it is okay, but I want to hear what you say. Bentley and Lee in the same lineup.
Yeah, you're going to get all the studs.
Yeah, I think that that's completely fine. You're not allocating major salary. Carnes or Lee, I think it would be Lee.
Agreed.
Riley Leonard or Dart on FanDuel?
Dart.
Yeah. Within Texas Tech, Douglas or Eakin?
Douglas.
Superflex Brown, yeah, I think that. There's a lot of ways to build with these quarterbacks, but yeah, I would still suggest getting multiple quarterbacks in. Again, just playing around with the Sims, predominantly 2 quarterback lineups, and that is not surprising in the least bit. Let's see, what else do we have? FanDuel quarterbacks under 9. It's going to be Ja'Cory Brown probably as your cheapie there. The rest of the quarterbacks are priced up. Maybe Pavia.
I think Ja'Cory has an untapped ceiling. We talked about this on Betting You. What they asked him to do was, I don't know why they did this. Nearly 50% of his attempts were 20 yards downfield. It was either we're going to run the hell out of this ball or we're going to take a deep shot. And he completed 0 of them. So his box score looks horrific. But I mean, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I'm just not sure why they asked him to do that.
Yeah. I don't really know. I mean, I listen,
that was weird,
context. Man. Just look at the line. A lot of love to the bounce house tonight with an undefeated BYU, and I don't disagree with that.
Like people are saying Ja'Cory can't throw. I don't think that's the case. At least I don't know.
Well, yeah, the unknown is the potential value. It also could go horribly wrong, but
Just what a game they called. Slam it up the middle every
I
play
don't,
or throw it as far downfield as you can.
I don't know. I haven't done anything with UCF yet, and I'm not sure I'm going to, but there's a chance. Again, if you're in Discord, you'll find out for sure, but there's a chance that they end up on the card today. I think we're in pretty good shape here, friends. We've got a couple minutes. We are going to bounce. Oh, we got to get over. Come on now. We answered a lot of questions. Let's get over 100 likes on the way out. We can do it. We only need a couple more, and we'll take a couple more questions. Brown, Hoover stack. Yeah, you could definitely do that. Both those quarterbacks have some abilities. We did pretty good. Besides the Trey Harris news, nothing else really popped up.
No, and it should be a pretty clean day. I say that now and watch. It'll be the apocalypse, but I don't know.
Oh, it's going to be the apocalypse. I hear you. It's going to be a crazy day. I hope whatever you're doing, whatever you're betting, whatever you're building is certainly profitable. And on that note, friends, we're going to bounce on it here. But thanks again for tuning in. We love doing this show. Again, hit the like button on your way out. It helps us out a ton. It only takes a couple seconds. This is the last question we will take. Best straight bet of the day. You got one for the people?
SMU.
Yeah, go Mustangs. Wait till them in Pittsburgh. Just wait. That's going to get dangerously insane. But until then, friends, have a great Saturday ahead. I really hope you enjoy yourself. From me, from Matt, and from Mike behind the glass, all three of us, cash those tickets, build those lineups, and let's celebrate next week with some big scores. Until then, guys, good luck, enjoy, and we'll talk to you soon.